Okay, block physics. This is a real quick review of Thursday, Friday, 9:24, 9:25. You might hear tables moving around because people are moving some desks around, ready to get you guys back in a hybrid in the next door classroom. Number one for hybrid, remember if you're an A, you come into the classroom, we'll be working together. If you're a B, then you'll get on the meets, we'll meet together. You will see, hopefully, me in front of the board like this. So here's the board, and we've got a camera up ready to go, and you'll be able to see the board, and I'll be able to welcome you to the class if you're a B. And then at some point, real quick, we'll have you guys go off, and you'll be doing your work at home while we're working here. Then when we switch to Thursday, Friday, the Bs will come in. They will be a little bit behind, like we'll always just be staggered one day behind. I'll teach the B hybrid what we learned on Monday, Tuesday, and the kids at home will have hopefully work to do that will build on what they've learned. And so then we'll just keep going from there. All right, so that's the classroom and hybrid. What we did is number one, we went to the classroom and we put an extra page into our interactive notebook. And so what you need to do is go to your classroom. Here's our classroom, and here's the class work, right? We get a glance and resources, digital interactive notebook. You'll click here to open up your digital interactive notebook. You'll click here to get today's pages. And so when you see today's pages, you'll just be one page. That page right here, remember you go to the left over here, you right click, you copy, then you go to your interactive notebook. And so I'll go to my interactive notebook, open up my interactive notebook. It's already there, but you can see what I do is then I just page down here on the left. I find where I want to put it. I left click, so there's a line there, and then I right click and I paste. Okay, and then I can put that page in. All right. So those of you guys, Wednesday we had a introduction to the metric system, Go Formative. Most of you guys have done that already. So this page right here is just asking you to go ahead and fill in a couple more things from that lesson. All right, so that's what you're doing. And then the last thing what we want to talk about is, I got to find it. Oh, here. Okay, is what did we do on Thursday, Friday? And so what we did was we did this introduction to BAR. BAR is called Building Assets and Reducing Risks. It's our freshman program. So you guys know that we as teachers will meet to talk about each of our students. If we're having any trouble, then the teachers will advise us. I mean, we'll talk to each other about, hey, we're still having trouble with a particular student following through with this. We'll be able to use different things so that we can help you. We can assign you a tutor. We can build a program for you to get back on track. We can assign a teacher to be kind of your mentor to help you. And so that's the behind the scenes things of BAR. The thing that you'll experience is that you'll experience a team building or other type of activity in each one of your classrooms every week, but so every 3 weeks for science. So we'll go science, we'll do one of these activities, then you'll experience it in your English class, then you'll experience it in your history class, and then you'll come back and next week you'll have it in science. So we'll do these activities. We did a rare birds activity, and so if you were willing to get back on track on that, you can ask me and I'll give you the Google form to fill that out. All right. So the last thing was we did a PowerPoint on graphing. And so let me pull that one over here. Open it here. There it is. All right. And so what I told the kids was when you're doing graphing, make sure if we can get this a little bit bigger. Apparently it does not want to. But we'll do it with this, all right? So the first thing is we learned these 6 things that must go into every graph, right? Do not try to write this all down. You're going to live it. You're going to figure it out. But at the end of the day, at the end of this thing, I'll bring back this slide and you'll see that you'll just write down those bullet points. But every graph, what they need is they need labels on the X and Y axis. I'll show you what that means. We need to make a title. We need to number the scale on each axis. Some people find that the hardest. We're going to practice that when you come in for hybrid. We need to plot our data, draw a trend line, and find slope. And so let's go over that real quick. If we look at this graph, we have this data on the left side here, and we have a blank sheet of paper right here. And so what we're trying to do here is tell you that you need to put something on the y-axis here, something on the x-axis here, and put a title. So if we were to be told to graph position, this would be like a car, and this is how far it is from its starting point, so 10 centimeters, 15 centimeters. And we wanted to graph that versus time, so how long did it take to get from 0 to 10, and then how long did it take to get from 0 to 15. We could make a graph. So first of all, one of the things that you do want to write down in your notes is we're always going to put time on the x-axis, okay? It's important because we want to see time moving forward, and that's how we're always going to do it. So let's remember the first step, label and put units on your axes. So we're going to put position here because we know we want to put time here on the x. So position on the y in its unit centimeters, and time on the x and its unit is seconds. Then we want to name it. So this is the second step. Name it. Well, what is the title? The title isn't not a car going down the track. It's not some sort of experiment number 1. It is simply whatever we have here versus whatever we have here. And so in this one, it would be position versus time. So you see we put in position versus time. All right, that's step 2. Step 3 is we want to build our scales. Now our scales are how much of each one of these little boxes worth. And so our scales are not based on this or this or this or this particular number. Instead, it's based on the range or how far it is here. So we know it's between 0 and 60. So we need to be able to fit 0 to 60 here. And so one idea is that make every box worth 5. If we do that, well, then we can skip. We won't have to write 5. We just put 10. So this would have been 5, 10, 15, 20. And we see that that pretty much does a very good job of filling in our chart because we have to get up to at least 60. Here is 60. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we always use at least half of the graph paper. So spread it out instead of having it like really small, right? We need to know, we need to be able to see it. And so that worked out pretty well. You might be able to say, well, maybe we can make it even better, okay? And so let's say if we try to make it better, make every other one worth 5. Well, here you can see if we did that, we only get up to 50 and we don't get high enough, right? And so we see that it would probably be best just to stick with our original idea, every block worth 5. All right, it's a lot harder on the x-axis because we have these decimal points, but we can hide the last two and just see that these numbers actually come out to be like 9, 15, 19. And so that's a little bit easier when you think about it because then we can just say, oh, well, we'll just do 10, 20, but then we'll put a decimal in front of it. So 0.1, 0.2. All right. So that's how we're building the scales, and we're going to practice that, I promise you, next week. And so then we need to put in our data. And so our data is like this. Our first data point is 10 on the y and 0.09 on the x. And so that point is somewhere right over here. So I can put that point right there. And then the rest of them, we can just do the same thing. And so the graph looks like this. All right, so that's step 4. Step 5 is finding a trend line. Now, trend lines are important in science because they mean something. It's not like back in 8th grade where we're just practicing. The trend line actually is the average of all of these points. okay? And it's a great way to find an average, and it also gives us more information. In a position versus time graph, the trend line gives us the speed of the car. And so when we draw a trend line, we want to get as many of the dots on the trend line. This is something you're probably used to because your teachers used to go home and they used to develop charts where every point was on the line. Well, that's not real science. In real science, we're going to find our points more like this, where our points are going to be sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes to the left or the right, and sometimes they'll be way off, where we've made just a real big mistake when we took our data. But a trend line always tries its best to get within a certain distance of all of them. So it's just an eyeball and say, oh, well, some are going to be a little bit above, some will be a little bit below, and if we put it right down the middle, we're good. That creates an average. So this is a good one, a good trend line, but it's hard to dispute that there's other versions of the trend line that are just as good. So don't worry, we won't fight you on that. But there are some that are just plain off wrong. So here's some wrong ones. The blue one right here, it tried to get the first two ones and then was way off and didn't get any of these in. So that one's a bad trend line. The red one, well, it wanted to get these 2 points in, but never even came close to these two, right? That's a bad one. And this yellow one right here isn't even close to anything. And so that's a bad trend line. So there is some trend lines that are bad, but most of them we can say, well, it's good enough. All right, finding slope. So now we've spent a long time getting you guys ready for high school to find slope. Slope means something now. It's just not an exercise. And so slope will always be something that we can use to our advantage in science. And I want to teach you a unique, not a unique, but a better way to find slope than maybe you're used to. Many of you guys are used to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Perfectly fine. If that's the way you want to do it, that's great. But what I wanted you to do is the first step. When you're finding slope, okay, here's a slope of a line, we do not use our data points. So we do not find the data points here to find our slope. We need to find points on the line. Remember, our line is not necessarily on any of the data points, and we're trying to find the slope of that line. So if you were to use some of these points here to find slope, you would be wrong because they are not on the line. And so instead, we need to find points on the line. And so we make it easy on ourselves by going up the line and finding spots where the line crosses exactly with the grid, like this one right here. And if you see this one right here, see, it hits the 20 mark and it hits the 0.10 mark perfectly. That makes our lives easier. We put a little point on the line. And we keep going up here, and eventually we get to this one right here. It's pretty close. It's definitely here on this grid line, and it's a bit off here. All right. From that point forward, you can use y2 minus y1. So y2 is right here. y1 is right here, divided by x2 right here over x1, or minus x1 right here. Okay, that's one of the ways to find slope. We'll practice. I always like to do simply rise over run. Rise over run, just simply you take the line, this point right here, and you say, how far do I rise between this point and this point? Well, I rose from 10 or 20 to 50. Okay, so I rose 30. So that's my rise. And then my run, well, it's from here to here. So my run is from point 2 to 0.5, I believe that is. And so then it's 0.3. So my run is 0.3. All right, we'll practice those two different ways. If that's the way you want to do it, we'll learn how to do them both ways. All I want you to know from now, okay, is I'm going to put this back up here, is that I'm going to be asking that you guys make sure that you get all 6 things in your graphs. And so I'm going to end this video right now with this screen paused. And if you want to take notes, you want to take notes of the bullet points, and then you're done. We'll see you guys on Monday. And just know that we'll practice all this. So just don't worry if you're a little bit nervous on some of these things. We'll get it done.